Hi, I know it's been a while since I did a tutorial. Same effect, 6 different ways. So this simple basic thing, we're going to be doing it. We're going to start off in Cinema 4D, then I'll move on to Maya and replicate the same effect in Maya using Mesh. Then we move on to Modo and do the same thing in Modo. Then we move on to Blender. Then we move on to 3D Max. And then we do the same thing again in Houdini. All right, this is gonna be good. Let's get started. Quickly, we're just gonna put down a cube because cube is very important. Hold on Alt, and then I'm just gonna choose a cloner. That's gonna put the cube. Oh, it didn't do it. All right, I put a cube in the cloner, and in my cloner, we're gonna change the mode to grid. And in the grid, we're just gonna zero down the count on Y. We just wanna do X and Z. So I'm gonna just expand my size. So I'm just about there. Just not really using a precise number. Start dialing in some more details on the X and the Y. So I'm gonna put in about just about when they're just close. You can see the lines in between them. That's all right. And let's just put the same number over here, 32. All right, so now what we're going to do is just going to add a planar effector to it to just shift them. Already it's just affecting the position and exactly what we want to do when it affects the Y position. So just moving it about, say about 900 about, yeah, you can see it's hanging in the air. So now we don't want all of them to be floating like that. So what we're going to do is just add a fall off to it. So in the way of adding fall offs, I got a plane selected. I'm going to go to the planes fall off, and then in the fields, I'm going to just click here and add a spherical field to it. At the moment, they all shift back to the position because the sphere has no radius. It's really tiny bit of radius in there. So if you select the sphere, we can go and bump the size up. As we begin to dial the size up, you can already see the effect happening. And Mograph is very intelligent. It's just adding the colors to it for us. I mean, we didn't need that, but it's just doing it. We could go back to the plane and we could say, you see this thing here? That's what's affecting the colors. At the moment, we don't need the color, so we can just click on it not to affect the colors. But if you click here, it's for the transformation as well. So that's what we need. Now we just need some movement of this fall off. So I'm going to do that by just drawing a curve. So basically, I'm just going to middle click my mouse and I'm going to go to the top view. I'm going to zoom out, click on the curve and start from the center. Just some few points. I mean, just like you're drawing 6 turned upside down, or that's it. And then I'm going to select my spline. I don't want just hit enter to complete it. Oh, escape to complete it. Oh, what do you click to complete? Enter to complete it. It doesn't complete it. All right, so what do I do? Okay, there's something wrong. There's something going on wrong. All right, so enter to complete, escape to complete. It's not completing. What's going on? Enter. All right, so it looks like it's not going to stop, so I'm going to choose a different tool. All right, so we're going to select the spline, and we're going to change the type of the spline to a B spline so that we get this smooth kind of spline going on over there. And we just want to adjust our spline, so we're going to go into the edit mode, get out of point mode, and then we can just reposition it so that it's on our grid. So select the sphere, right click it, go to Cinema 4D text and say align to spline, and in that align to spline you drag the spline and put it in the path, and that's it. It's done. If you play, it's not going to move because you need to set the positioning on the spline where it should be. So I'm just going to go to up to from 0 and set it back to 0. Right click to reset it, set a keyframe on it, and I'll move about from 60 there about, and then we set it to 100. And that should do our animation for it. Make sure you click again to set another keyframe and go back and play it. And there you go. Boom. Sexy. All right. So now we're going to go into the planar effector. Just click here and then say delay. Okay, so that's going to give us the lag effect going on there. So as you can see, spheres properties, and we go on to color rim up. And here we can choose how we want the color, so we can change it to gradient. And in the gradient, I'm going to add another dot here. That's one there. I'm going to add one more in the middle. So we're going to start off with a cyan color. So we're going to scroll down here and bring it over here. So something like that. And then in the middle, we just want something like yellowish here. And then at the end, we want purple. I can see colors purple. So that's what we want. And if you could play, this is basically the effect that we were trying to achieve. All right, so Cinema 4D is done. Come on with me to Maya. So let's do the same thing. So Maya, we're gonna use Mash. Let's mush it up, man. So I'm just basically, I got my Mash editor here and my outliner here. So I'm just basically gonna get the famous cube. And we get a cube in the center of the scene. So with the cube selected, we just go ahead and create a new Mash network, and that's gonna create a grid for us. Change the distribution type to grid, because of course that's what we want. The grid size, we're gonna do it about that. We just want the X and Z. Let's do 15 by 15. That should do. All right. And we scroll down, and then we just leave the Y there and bump up the X, just as we did in Cinema 4D. You could go to the Z axis and bump it up a little bit. We need some more cubes. So we can actually go ahead and select the original cube and scale it down a little bit so we can get tiny cubes, because it looks like they're a little bit bigger. And with this tiny cubes, we can just always go back to the Mash, the distribution, and then add more to it so we can get more cubes, all right? And then more cubes on the Z as well, and that should do the trick. All right, so we got more than enough cubes to go. So go ahead and add. So we got offset. The way we can move things is offset. See offset as a planar effector. Basically, we're gonna offset on the position Y. We're gonna move it about 5 units up. Is that too much? Let's do 3 units up, and then it does the same thing. Lift all of them up. So now we need to add a fall off to it. So if you scroll down, you can see that it's got fall off object. I can right click in here and say create fall off, and that's going to create a new fall off. So what we're going to do is to scale this fall off down. And so let's go ahead and move on to the top view to do our curve. So we press on space bar, and then we can click on the Maya in the middle, and we can select top view. We can begin to create our curve by going to the curves. Yeah, so now we've got the curve, so we can begin clicking, 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 click, click, click there, and then hit enter to complete it. We can hide our mesh ripple, the copies. We can right click and set control points, and here we can begin to use the control points to shape it. Alright, so that's it. We can hide our duplicates, and then we can come out of take the spline and then reposition it to make sure. We can also scale it down because we can see that it's bigger than our stuff. So scale it down, and then we reposition it again. So hit spacebar again, click and go to perspective, and here we are. So with the fall off selected, we can control select the curve, and then we go on to constraint, and then now we can go to motion path and say attach to motion path, and automatically it's animated. You don't need to set keyframes for it. Cool. Maya is amazing, isn't it? So how do we achieve the lag effect here? Simple, easy peasy. So we're gonna go onto the Mash, and we're gonna click this plus button here. It's the same thing. We're gonna give you a menu, and we're gonna look for spring. The spring is gonna do is basically gonna spring. So with it's added, let's just play and see what we have. Ooh, already we're getting some cool effect. Get some kind of bouncing spring feel. So we can go to the spring properties, bring the damping, the stiffness back down to about the same level, so 0.42, 0.42, and that's gonna exaggerate the situation here. So we can bring the strength. We can bring the strength down to just have a lesser effect on it. And there you go. You have your lag going on, and that's so cool, man. Now let's add the colors to it. You're gonna go to add, and you say color. So now we got a color, but this just a plain color. So what do we do? Okay, so I'm gonna click on here, the texture map, and then we're gonna choose a ramp. And in the ramp, we're just gonna set the same basic things that we did. We're gonna click in the middle here to add one more. We're gonna change that. We have to select it, select here, select the color that we want. Then select this one, go in there. You're gonna choose yellow and choose purple. And that should do. So we have our colors going on here, but they're not really affecting. It's just a big giant yellow, just because we've not told Maya how to display these colors. For instance, we can just change this to like circular to see it's mapping it this way. So we're gonna leave it on a V-ramp, but Maya needs to know how to apply this texture to this. So we want to apply it upwards. So basically we want to apply it to the fall off. So to apply it to the fall off, there's a trick that you can do. You need to tell Maya what the shape is. So we're gonna create a sphere to mimic our UVs. So if you go to the color, you can see that it needs a UV mesh to be able to color this. But you can do some cool stuff like randomization and with those colors, which is so cool. I mean, value and all that, but we're not going to go into that. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create another sphere. And this sphere, I'm going to size it about the size of our fall off. We're not going to use the sphere for anything. We're just going to use it as the color. So if we come back to the color, and then we drag the sphere into it, you can see that it begins to color it that way. And this way we can go back to our fall off color and change the positioning of the colors to make sense here. So if, for instance, we could break this one a bit. Well, why is it this way? Okay, so we want the green one to be about there, somewhere there. So that means the yellow can go further and this can go here. So this is how we want to shade it. Great. Cool stuff, isn't it? We can also change from linear to exponential, that way. Or we can change it to smooth. That way we get a better shading. So now we can see that we're shading it this way. So we can also parent our sphere to the fall off. That way it will move with the fall off together. So now we can go ahead and hide the sphere, and we got our colors really affecting it. I'm gonna go back in the colors, and you can see that the color, I don't like this color, it's really fighting my eyes. So I'm gonna go in there, I'm gonna click here and say we want it to be a bit darker, a bit bluish. Oh, that's cool. That's kind of easy to look at. All right, so basically we've got the same effect going on here. Right, so let's move on to Modo. So what we need is a basic cube. So we're gonna add a procedure cube. Add a cube right here. Type in cube. Cube is amazing. You need cube, and in the cube, we also need a particle generator. See this as our cloner. And we also need a particle replicator, also part of our cloner. And we're gonna drag these stuff. We drag this into the view, and we also need so right now when we connect the particles generator to the particle source, nothing really happens, just because it's hidden. There's something really happening, but you can't see until we bring in the prototype mesh, our shape, and connect it to the prototypes. Now we can see that it's copying some meshes onto the surface. So if you go to the particle generator, select it, and then we can go down to the size. This is the size of our grid. We just set the size to about there, set the white to about there as well. And as we can see, our cube is so huge. So we're gonna select the cube, and in the size, we're gonna click all of here, and it says 0.02. And that is a very tiny bit. So we're gonna make it 0.2. That's great. And we can see that our grid is doing some silly thing here. So we don't want anything on the Y. Set it to 1. And then we can also increase our count on the X. And then increase the count on the Z. So we get a perfect grid. Then we can hide our main cube over here. So it's in the way. So basically we got it. So what we have to do now is to create a fall off for it. And it's as easy as spelling the word fall off. So we're going to type in particle. And then if you scroll down, we get particle modifier right here. So we add that to the scene. We connect it to the particles. And then we connect the particles to the particle source. And this way, in the particle modifier, we can go down there and say we want to increase on the Y position. So it moves these particles up so they're hanging. And then we can apply a fall off to that the changes that we've made. So the way we're going to apply fall off, we're just going to add and begin to type fall off, and it's going to bring up different types of fall offs. The one we're looking for is the rate of fall off. You're going to click here to add it to the scene. It also creates an object here, item here. So we connect the fall off to the fall off, and boom, we got it working already. So let's just rotate and then position this thing here to see. So our fall off, we can select the fall off and then move it, bring it down just about there. And that's good. So we can see that if we move this fall off, it works perfectly. Now let's go and create our spline. Go into where it says camera and choose the top view. I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to go ahead and go to curves. And then in the curves, you need a mesh to draw a curve in. So we can't just draw it anywhere. So what we have to do is to add a new mesh object. And this one, we're going to call it our curve. So in the curve mesh, now you can see these curves are active. So we're going to choose the base here, or we're going to choose a curve. And then we could begin to put some points down to draw our famous 609 curve. And I hit enter as soon as you're done. You can begin to play with this point. So we got our curve. Select the fall off. Control select the curve. Come to the side. It's a setup. And then we're going to go to constraint. Yeah. And the constraint, if you scroll down, we have path. So we're just going to, with these two selected, click path. It's going to do, you go under the fall off, we have the path constraint there, and then we can animate the path offset. Go to frame 0 there and click here to set a keyframe into frame 60 or 70 as usual, and then set it to 100. So when we play back, we basically got our animation going on. Now let's move on to the lag. The lag works on geometry, but it doesn't work on particles. So the way we can achieve this is by converting the particles into points. So we need a geometry, we need a mesh to convert this particle into. So let's just create one. So add mesh, and then we're going to name this mesh particles. We're going to go to procedure, and then we're going to say merge. So when we merge meshes, what are we merging? If we dial down, if we go to source, then we can click add to add something, to match something to this. What do we want to match? Not the particle generator, we want a particle modifier, because that is the, if you look in the node, that's the last thing that's going in here. So we choose the particle modifier. So let's just disconnect this and bring the particles in here. And disconnect that onto it and see. Yes, we do have points in there. This particle modifier has been converted to these points. So now we can affect these points with any lag effect. So let's just do that. Go to the particles. We're going to select it and going to add to it what we call lag. And we need the lag, soft lag. So that's it. We've got a lag going on. It's similar to the one in Maya as well. The way the shaders work here is this base material is affecting everything. So if we do any changes to it, anything we add to the scene, it's going to take the same color. We don't want that. So what we want to do instead is to create a group. And in this group, we need to tell it what to affect. The texture, you can say it should affect all items, or with a polygon type, or we can choose to let it affect only mesh. So if we do that, if we say it should affect only mesh, if we add new material into here, if we add a new material in that group, and then let's say we change the color to something like this, then it's going to affect only the cubes. Just leave this color back to white, and we can add some cool layers. We could go to processing, and then we can grab a gradient. So in our gradient, we can just edit gradient, and in the gradient with all the colors selected, we can just begin to choose our colors. So we could choose our first color, for instance, like this. For this dot, if you select this, choose your first color it somewhere like that, and then we can the way I do this quickly is to just copy and paste, and it's gonna paste it somewhere to the end. Let's see, somewhere to the end, and let's paste again. We need 3 more. So we put this one to like yellow, and then we make the last one there the purple. So at the moment, let's just spread it across to see from 0 to 150 to 300. Let's just do it that way. And nothing is really happening here. Why is it so? Because we are not in rendering mode, so we can't see anything. So we need to change our display type to ray GL, and then we want to turn it to 4. This way it will see whatever here. So we got the gradient back. We don't really know what's going on. Let's go back in the gradient and see what's going on. Let's just try to bump up these things, and it's because they are far apart. So if we begin to bring them together, you can begin to see the shading going on. So at the moment, the shading is being applied to the individual objects. So the gradient is affecting individual objects, but we just want it to affect all of them. So how do we achieve that? So by telling the gradient to use an input parameter, right now it's using the incidence. So if we change that idea of using the incidence, and rather we could have tons of things we could choose. We could go to particle effects, for instance, and then say use particle ID, and it's going to use the gradient based on the particle ID, but that's not what we want. So we're going to click it again. What we're looking for is going to sample parameters, and then what the parameter we want to choose is we want to use the Y distance to locator. The locator is sitting at 0, 0, 0 for every texture that's applied. The locator is sitting at 0, 0. So we're saying each object in the cloner, check its Y position and compare the distance between that and 0. So obviously the ones that are up, it's going to grade it from that way. So if we do it that way, we get a cool gradient going on. So as you can see, the gradient is going on where the objects are on the Y position are up. So if you can see, if we play now, we got our gradient going on. But then let's go into switch the colors around to make it look the same. So which means we want this bit to come here, because that's the bit that we want it to dominate. We want this bit to go there, this bit there. This bit should come in somewhere here. Yep, this is what we want. And where does the yellow come in? There. Again, we want to choose blue. That's what we chose in Maya, isn't it? Great. So as you can see, we go the same thing done here. Amazing. So we can always go to the particle modifier and shoot our particles up some more if you want them to go all the way up.